Hey everyone, this is Savannah and this is my second video tutorial and I'm going to show you how to make grid lines in dimensions to start creating a floor plan. I'm going to start it on the first floor, and here is the example of a finished first floor but with all the beams and everything. You should have these drawings already. This one you're seeing right here is for the diagrid system, but for the first floor it's going to look identical to the same one you would see in the straight skeleton system, so this can be used for both building projects, whichever one you're working on. So let's get started. I'm going to pull up a blank one that I already have, and if you see how I did that, you can restore previous windows on Revit, just help keep everything organized and have quick access so you don't have to reopen it and file open every time. So let's get started with our blank. You're going to want to go to the structure tab, then click grid in the datum panel, and just click anywhere, one click, two click, and you created a line, and that'll be our first grid. So easy enough. Click modify and click anywhere, click out of the edit portion right there. And now next I want to create several of these in a row. I could redraw them all, but that seems like a lot of work and kind of unnecessary. So instead we're going to go to the Modify tab, go to Array, click on the grid line. Oh, actually I'm going to click on the grid line, then click Array. And now I'm going to want, just like in the last drawing, I'm going to want 7 copies of these. And then I'm going to click anywhere here, and then I want them 20 feet apart. I can either move it around until it says 20 feet, or I can type 20 feet, hit enter, and there we go. I have 7 grid lines to start with. Now you notice it kind of overlaps with this little east panel here, so I'm just gonna move that just so it's out of the way there. There we go. It doesn't matter where those are. Those are just for organization, because you'll see, just to give a brief explanation on these arrows, you'll see this says north, west, east, and the south right there, which will be good to know when you get into the side elevations. Right here you'll see east, south, north, and west. Those arrows just point to where it is, but they don't serve any function. They're just there so you know where everything is in your view. So we're just going to move them around just so you can see it easier. But anyway, for now, back to the grid lines. We have our 7 verticals, and now we want 7 horizontal. We're going to go back to structure, grid line, just draw a line somewhere near the top, maybe somewhere where you want your first. Click out of it, and you notice this says number 8. It'll do all the numbering automatically, but I want them as letters for the side, just tell them apart. So I'm going to change that to A, click apply, and now that's a letter A. And I'm going to repeat the same process I did before. Click on the grid line, click array. I want 7. I want them 20 feet apart. Got it, and there you go. It'll automatically number them and letter all them, which comes in nice. Once again, I'm gonna move this just for visuals. And you'll see that maybe I didn't make these initial lines long enough, but that's an easy change. You just wanna click on, maybe, since these are an array, they automatically become a group. So what you can do is hit edit group, click on the line, drag it down, finish, and there we go. It already applied the rest of them. And you can always move these around later, or if for whatever reason you decide you don't want these in an array anymore, click ungroup. You will have to do that for each individual line if you do want to do that, but I'm going to go ahead and ungroup them all because it can just come in handy later on for editing. We already have the dimensions we want, so we don't need them in an array anymore. So, fortunately, there's no really shortcut to doing this. You just have to click all of them. Checking to make sure I got all of them. Nope, missed the first one. Okay, and there we go. And now that we have that done, the next thing I want to do is edit these grid lines. So you see this will say grid 1/4 bubble, but if you remember from the last sheet I showed you, these grid lines are actually pink instead of black. That's just because it's easier because you're going to be having other beams in the view and they're black. It could be a little bit confusing if everything's the same color. So I want to change the color of these. So I'm going to go to Edit Type. I want to duplicate this 1/4 bubble pink. You just want to hit duplicate, rename, click apply, and now we have a new family. So I'm going to click magenta, okay, and okay. So now what I've done is I've created a new family. And you see I click that off, it's pink, but now all the rest of these are black. So what you can do to click everything is you just click and drag, make sure it's covering the entire object, and there you go. Now I have everything selected. So I hit grid. I have all these different types saved, but I'm going to pull up 1/4 bubble pink. Then there we go. Now everything's pink, or whatever color you want. And just to give you, so you understand this for later on, you see that these bubbles are a little bit smaller here than what you may see on the sheet. I wouldn't recommend trying to change the size of the bubbles. It can get a little complicated. So if you do want them bigger for this view, what you're going to want to do is change the scale here, the bottom left corner. I have it set to 1/8, but if I change it to, say, 1 inch for 20 feet, there we go. Everything's a lot more bigger, a lot more visible. That'll come in handy once you get into the sheets, but for now it doesn't really affect anything. It's just for visualization. I'm just going to turn it back to 1/8. And there we go. Next, what we want to do in this tutorial is add dimensions. So I already have the dimensions saved in my quick access toolbar here, but you can also go to modify, measure, align dimensions. There's also linear, angular, radial for whatever we're going to do, but I'd recommend just using aligned. It's the easiest to use in my opinion. So just click here on any grid, click on the next grid, and it'll automatically measure it as 20 feet. It'll look small there, but again, the same thing with the scale. If you change the scale, it'll make it look a lot bigger. And you just have to repeat this for every view. So you know what the dimension is. It'll also help, fix these grid lines in place so that if you click, move around, it maybe won't want to move anymore. And you can move these around. You probably want to move these to the other side of the sheet, actually away from the letters, just for visualization, but for this tutorial I'm just going to show you, how to place these. You can always edit them later based on the sheet. Everything, like, say I do want to move this to the other side. And just drag it over like that, it's not a big deal. And that is the intro for grid lines and dimensions. Now I want to show you the last drawing. So something that you may notice here is that instead of having these individual 20 feet, I have it as 6 spaces at 20 feet. That was just done, to make it neater So I pull this back up. I'm actually gonna move all of these over. So let's say I don't want to click and drag each of them over. I hit select, but I've accidentally clicked everything. So what you want to do, click filter. I don't want grid, so I'm just gonna click dimensions. Apply, okay, and there we go. Now I've only selected the dimensions. Then I can click and drag all of them over, and now they're all on this other side. And I'm just gonna repeat that here. And that's everything. And I also want to add one big dimension. Which I think I will change the scale here though, just so it's easy to read. There we go, that's there. So that's how we do the big dimensions, little dimensions. But if you do want to add that little text, I was asked to do that to make the sheet look neater, but unfortunately there's not really a shortcut to do that. So if you want to do that, I will just gonna click all of these. I'm gonna delete them. Hit the delete key. And if you want to do that, it's a little complicated, but it's more like just sort of like really wing it, trying to get creative with the dimensions so they look how you want. So I'm gonna pull up dimensions again. Actually, I will put one of them back. Then I'm gonna click here. I'm gonna click edit type. And I'm gonna do the same thing we did with the grid line, where we duplicate it. And I'm gonna name this blank. And I'll show you why. This is gonna be blank because we are basically creating a dimension, but I wanna get rid of the number. So it's basically just gonna be a line. So there's probably other ways to do this, but I think the simplest way is just to create it to 0 inches. You can do that. Click OK. Now it's blank, you see. So now you have the arrows there like you want, but there's no text. And you're basically going to repeat this for every line. Actually, before I do, there's something else I want to do. I'm going to click on blank, edit type again. Just going to edit this one. And you see you had these arrows here, but on the last sheet, I think it looks neater to have a little slash instead of a line. So if I could find it here, tick mark. I don't want the arrow. I'm gonna click diagonal 1/8, apply, and there we go. Now it's a line instead of an arrow. And I can change the same thing here. Edit type, tick mark, diagonal 1/8, apply. And there we go. Now everything has a tick mark. And I'm just going to keep going with these blank dimensions here. Here's your list of all the things, including the one you just made. Shows your families. And now I have everything. I'm gonna move this a little bit. And next, once you have that, is just adding a text box. So you can do that. There, you can go to annotate, text. I wanna say I want it here, 6 spaces. So I'm just gonna type 6 spaces at 20 feet. then that's our text box. You can center it so it looks neater. And there we go. That's how I did it. I could also, you know, move this around however I want. But yeah, that's how I made it for the last drawing. And you could edit the text size and the font and everything as well. And like, same here, change the yeah, like that. You can make it big or small or whatever. Okay, so that should be the basics of dimensions and grid lines.